The principal function within the CASS service is manage teams and roles, and this facility empowers organization to actually structure the application towards their team structure and structure of the organization. This enables an individual organization to define all the departments as we have highlighted here. These departments can have a hierarchical structure, and within each structure we define a number of individual roles by adding a new role to that particular part of the organizational structure. So here we've got a development program which comprises engineering, commercial, project management, finance, typical organizational subunits within a given large program of development. Then we would focus on what we call defining roles, designing roles. This is our second principal function at the high level. Defining roles takes us to ability to develop the characterize and develop the roles essential to the operation of each department. For example, if we take the role of a team leader in this organization here called IMS, this is the beginning of our development role. The screen demonstrates the nature of our approach. It's entirely graphical based, model based. The model at the top is the objective in mind, that is competence of a person who's in charge of that role. In principle, our model is hierarchical in terms of levels. At level 1, the essential components of competence are universal and appear in each model and each role. They start from domain knowledge and understanding, skill and application experience, physical and psychological attributes, efficiency and waste prevention, adaptability and quality and consistency, and finally innovation and creativity. These are the positive parameters which impact positively on someone's competence. There are also 3 negative attributes which we also characterize. One of them is to do with lack of learning. The next one is to do with lack of relevant experience, up-to-date experience and practice. And finally, recurrent errors and violations. So collectively, these would define a competence model, and our environment for defining a role characterizes each one of these for that particular role. For example, it says what would determine domain knowledge and understanding for this particular role. Again, each component can be decomposed to a lower level of detail in which we would put specific predictors for knowledge, for skill, for psychological and physical attributes, etc. Here in this environment, we actually design the model in terms of components which are predictors of level 1 parameters, knowledge, skill, physical and psychological qualities, etc. This environment is a role definition environment. It's a graphical editor which runs in the web environment entirely without the use of any other local application. Now, the process for designing roles is usually an organizational ownership, in the sense that people who understand the essential attributes of the high-performing person in that role, representatives of HR, line managers, and independent people, a panel of about 3 to 5 people would get together and decompose our generic 6+3 model into specific predictors for that role. So it is done at a high level by the organization and owned by the organization. The next task, if you look at the key functions at the homepage level of the CASS portal, is evaluating yourself. This will be illustrated in a separate screen. Once the individual has been assigned a role which has been designed by the organization, the line manager would assess that role in terms of its correctness, in terms of its authenticity, evidence that's been provided to various parameters, and assessment of the role generally involves taking an existing model of a role and planning an assessment period. This assessment period here, for example, allows us to start the evaluation time and the end for that process. Say the assessment will take place over 2 weeks or 1 week of time period, and then the assessment can begin. At the moment, we have no specific roles available for assessment, and once all the assessment is done, we close the assessment, and that would deliver a snapshot of someone's total competence profile at that moment in time. The final function is analysis and reports. Assuming that an organization has got more than few people, generally each individual would receive a remit and an information to go and self-evaluate. When they finish with the self-evaluation, which we'll illustrate soon, the line manager, they would submit their form, completed form, to the line manager. Line manager will do his assessment in terms of challenging the values and the scores given by the individual. Once an agreement is arrived at, we'll refer to analysis of the particular role evaluation. Here's an example screen for analysis. I have highlighted a particular version here. On this screen, you would see the general schema, which is the shape of the model, which has the 6 positive contributors and 3 negative. You can expand each component to its predictors for that particular role. If you wish to see those details at the screen level, you would also be able to get a number of graphical representations. If you have had more than one evaluation, you could see the progression in time on particular aspects, on knowledge component, on skill component, on behavioral component, etc. So there are a large number of chart types depending which one is considered to be more valuable or relevant to the individual supported by the system. And you can actually then switch off the bits that you don't want and just look at the chart for a given evaluation date. Each one of these represents a separate evaluation for a given date. Then you can profile it against multiple dates to see which areas are showing progression and where we are unfortunately facing a deficit.